Gidon Lev, I cannot tell you what an honour this is to chat to you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be with you.
Bless you. Your book, Let's Make Things Better, a Holocaust survivor's message of hope and celebration of life. Goodness me, don't we all need this right now, Gidon?
Yes, you better believe it.
And I know you're happy to talk about your extraordinary life and what you went through as a child. If I may, can I take you back to the beginning? I think your stories need to be shared. You know, the people forget, sadly forget. Would you mind telling us about your childhood and what happened for you?
Sure, I'm happy to tell you. I had a very unusual childhood. Fact is, if we look at it black on white or white on black, I didn't have a childhood. Because in 1935, I was born in Karlovy Vary, Karlsbad in the Sudetenland. And at that point, everything seemed to be wonderful. But by the time I was 3 years old, in 1938, as we all know or can read about it, Hitler took over. And from that moment on, there was no more childhood, really. So in 1938, I actually was 3 years old. And you know, the fact that I am about to turn 90, thinking back to being a little boy, many things, many memories are gone forever. But here and there are things that I do remember, like we all do.
What do you
And
remember?
I'll give you an example. Because my family, my father's family, we were living together with my grandma in a certain part of the city. And Jews were ostracized, separated, dehumanized, couldn't buy, couldn't sell, couldn't work, couldn't be doctors, lawyers, businessmen, anything. My parents and my grandparents decided we have to leave this place. We can't. We can't make a living. So they decided one night to go to the train station and take a train to Praha, which at that time, 1938, was still part of the Czech Republic, because the German Nazi army was only in the border area, which was called the Sudeten. And I remember something very specific. I was 3 years old, and I had just had a birthday. My birthday was in March, and I had received a tricycle, a beautiful tricycle. It was red, and it had black handlebars. And of course, I brought it to the train station. And my parents and my grandparents, they had suitcases and bedrolls and rucksacks and all things. And of course, what did I have? I had my tricycle. And of course, I wanted to take it. And my parents said, "No, no, 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 Peter, you can't. You can't. We don't have room. Please put it aside. Somebody will take it. Don't worry." No, no, no. And I cried, and I didn't have. Even my grandfather, whom I loved dearly, said, "I'll take it for him. I'll take." No, 9. So I was heartbroken. Of course, this is heartbroken over a 3-year-old little kid.
Yes.
and I couldn't take it on the train. And they even said, "We'll buy you a new one." That never happened.
No.
So that was something that I remember that stuck with me to this day.
Understandably. Understandably, you were 3 years old and you were getting onto a train, you didn't know what was going to happen. But things then got even worse, didn't they, Gidon?
They got worse. So we arrived in Prague, and it's something in around June, summer, and we were living in a central part of Prague, and on the third floor, and my parents couldn't work because the Germans didn't allow them to work in anything having to do with business. Buying, selling was not allowed. And within short period, the Germans passed all kinds of rules. One day they said, everybody who's Jewish and has a bank account, you will sign it, go to the bank, and you will sign it over to the Third Reich. Everybody who has a radio or a camera or typewriter has to bring it to the police station. Everybody who is Jewish after 8 o'clock has to be at home. Every week or two, a new rule. So that by the time a year and a half later, the Jewish people, and me included, we had no rights. We had we couldn't even sit on a public bench. They passed a rule that Jews are not allowed into public places like pools, gyms, parks. And from that, I remember one instance that stuck in my mind forever. My grandpa used to take me to a little park just around the corner. And there were a small playground there with swings and slides and, all kinds of games that children play. I was now 4 years old, 4.5, maybe 5. And I used to love to go there. And he would take me and I would climb into this one swing that was like a canoe. And he would push me, and I was in seventh heaven.
Mm.
And one day we come there, and he says, no, 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 nein, Peter, nein, du kannst nicht gehen da. You can't go there. Well, I said, why? What did I do? And I'm climbing in, and he comes running, and he takes me by force into his arms. Peter, please, we have to go. We can't be here. And I said, why? What did I do? Was I a bad boy? Did I not behave? Did I not clean up after? No, no, no. Here, take a look. Take a look over there. You see that sign? There's a big sign there. I, of course, couldn't read yet. He says, it says in German, Juden verboten, Jews not allowed. And I knew I was Jewish. I was not religious, but I knew I was Jewish. I wasn't sure exactly what that really meant, but okay. But I was so unhappy. I was crying all the way home. And he tried to explain to me over and over. So when we talk about childhood, it was taken away from me.
It's so cruel. I mean, it's so cruel. And those things that stay with you, as you say, you're about to have your 90th birthday. Many happy returns. Here's to the next 90 as well, Gidon. But then you had to board trains again, and your family did. And as the book says, a Holocaust survivor's message of hope and celebration of life. We're going to get to the celebration, and we're going to get to the hope. But then the war broke out, and you had to face the Holocaust. You and your family.
Yes, well, it all went by stages. The Germans know how to organize and set things up, everything karate out, straight ahead, and turn right, turn left, go forward, go left, sit, stand. That's the general idea, but the specifics were much crueler. And then by the time we, the Jews who had moved to Prague and the Jews were actually that were living there, um, had already lost all rights to of any sort. So by the time they said that we're going to resettle you, resettlement they called it. They didn't call it a camp, Lager. The German word for camp is Lager. No, this is not Lager. This is resettlement in a town. And well enough, on December 3rd or 4th, my grandfather and my grandma and my father received the notification that they have to report to the straight train station and be sent to Theresienstadt. It was the only concentration camp in Czechoslovakia. And I remember at the time, again, I remind you that I was a little kid. So things are not everything do I remember was I aware of, but certain things stay with you for
Of
life.
course, of course.
And I remember I was in a hospital because I had been operated and my tonsils had been removed because I had been sick. They were infected. And my grandpa and my father came to the hospital and I couldn't even talk to them because it hurts. But one thing they did, they brought me ice cream.
Oh,
They brought me ice cream because the only thing that a person who has tonsils removed can eat is ice cream. And they of course talked to me and said, "Peter, we will see you." The Germans said that they will bring you and your mom to the same place that we are. We're going to set things up there. Don't worry. And that's exactly what happened. 2 weeks later, my mother and I, together with hundreds of women and their children, some older, some younger, were all brought to a smaller train station, not the main train station. And we had to sort of camp on the cold uh, floor in a big train station. Of course, the train station in my mind was as big as the Grand Central Station of New York. But of course, that's silly because it wasn't. It
hmm.
was maybe 1/5 of that size. But for a little kid, 5 years old or going on 6, it was huge and crowded and people pushing. This is my spot. This is my spot. And my blanket is here. My suitcase is here. I remember it was horrific. It was horrific.
Were you scared?
Very much so. Very much so. And I cried and I was scared. And the kids in the toilets were very limited. And food is what we brought with us. Uh, it is hard to describe. It is hard to describe.
And then you were
And finally,
taken there.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and then you were taken to Theresienstadt.
Then we were taken to a tour. Yeah, so the next day we slept there 1 or 2 nights. I don't remember if it was. I think it was 2 nights. And finally, they put us on a train. It was a regular train. It wasn't one of the cattle trains. But instead of 4 people in a
A carriage.
carriage,
Yeah.
there were 6 or 8, sometimes even 10, squeezed together with the luggage and stuff. And then we arrived in the camp. But we didn't arrive in the camp. We arrived in a town, um, about 3 kilometers away. And this was in December. December in Czechoslovakia is very cold. I was just there. I can tell you, it still is cold. and and we had to walk. And I remember, just imagine, hundreds of women with one or two children, some babies, some small, each one lugging a suitcase and a knapsack and a bedroll, whatever we could. And it's cold and it's drizzly. And we're walking for 3 kilometers. And I was a small kid. I wasn't even 6 years old. And I could hardly carry my suitcase. I remember there was one young person. I don't know how he got onto the train together with all these women, and he saw that I had a hard time, so he helped me.
Oh,
So he helped me, and I remember that. And then we finally arrived at this barbed wire fence, and one of the women yelled out to the German soldiers that were guarding us, "So when do we see our husbands and our men?" And he answered back in German, "Morgen früh, 6 Uhr geht er zu den Fenstern, sagt er, die Frauen, die Männer gehen zur Arbeit," which means, translated, "Tomorrow in the morning, look out from your windows and you'll see the men marching to work at 6 o'clock in the morning." And it was true. That's exactly how we saw my father for the first time. And I remember us kids, we were about 10 or 12 people in one little room. And we woke up and all ran to the little window, a little window with bars over the window. And we looked out and we saw the men marching in groups of 50, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 10 or 5s, 50, and space and another 50. All were marching to work outside of the camp. And the men were not allowed to look up. And I called, "Papa, Arnold." And he was not allowed to look. He was not allowed to look. If he looked, if anybody from the men looked, they got a butt from a rifle in their back. And this was the beginning of my 4 years in this terrible place.
Gidon, I know everybody asks, but how I'm lucky enough and privileged to have spoken to other Holocaust survivors. The question is, how did you keep going? Where is that hope? Where do you keep that hope in you?
You know, let's start from the point that children, the minute they are living and alive and can run and speak and play and be mischievous, don't want to die. They want to stay alive. And they will do everything that they can to stay alive. And of course, because there are personality differences between all of us, in my personality, that took such a strong hold of me that, yes, I will do everything I can. And I did. I tried to find work, any kind of work, cleaning, taking care of the horses of the Nazi commanders, working in the fields, raising green beans or carrots, wherever I could do and find somewhere, finding some food. For example, working with the horses. So we had to clean the manure from the horses and brush them and feed them and everything. And if you did it week after week, day after day, or every 2 days or 3 days, whatever they decided, and you did a good job, sometimes the humanity of the officer whose horse you were taking care of would leave half a half a slice of bread someplace on the side, knowing that I would pick it up and take it. Maybe even a little small apple, something.
So there
And
were
that's
acts of
how
kindness there.
there were acts of kindness. There were not too many,
Not many, no, not
no,
many.
but there were. There
How
were.
were your family? Because I know not all of your family were in Theresienstadt with you. Other members of your family were in Auschwitz, weren't they?
Well, you see, it's like this. Theresienstadt was sort of a transit camp. It was much more than that because people also stayed there for some time. My father, for example, was there for almost 2.5 years. He was working in the mines, mining mica that was used by the Germans for insulating electronic machines, all kinds of electronics. And the rest of my family also went there. Sometimes they stayed there longer, sometimes not. Not always did we see them. Not always. There were periods where we were put into these huge buildings. Theresienstadt had been an army camp before World War One, and the barracks were in single story. They were 3-story buildings with a courtyard in the middle, and that's where I stayed. I stayed in one they called Dresden. Every one of those barracks had a name of a German city existing in Germany. And people came and people. There were two, or perhaps more, there were two main horrific fears in Theresienstadt. One was hunger. Hunger. We were hungry from morning to evening, from evening to morning. You know, when you think of it today, a child is hungry, what does he do? He goes to the kitchen, opens the cupboard, and takes out a cookie, or opens the fridge and takes out the yogurt. There were no fridges. There were no ice boxes. There were no cupboards. There was no food at all, except what the Germans gave out. So hunger was a terrible presence all the time. The other, fear of being sent east to Auschwitz, Dachau, Birkenau, Treblinka. We have to understand that we, not just the children, but the adults in the camp, didn't know that there were such things as gas chambers, didn't know that there were shooting people en masse, having them dig a ditch and then standing there and being shot in their faces. We didn't know. What we did know was that it was much worse than where we were. And it was such a terrible place also because at the same time as you were living with the daily insecurity and fear, there were people were being creative. People were putting on puppet shows. People were putting on little concerts. Some concerts were so good that the German officers came to listen. And the next day they received a little post in paper. At 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, be at the train station. We cannot even imagine how horrific that was. We cannot.
No, and obviously lessons that people learn, and the stories that must live on, and the stories must live on because God forbid it ever were to happen again. But yet you got through all of this. I know you lost so many members of your family, Gidon, and I'm so sorry. And what you witnessed and the pain. I'm going to ask that question again, if I may. Your books are all about forgiveness and love and hope and celebrating life. And I bang on about celebrating life, but I haven't witnessed, thank goodness, I haven't witnessed what you've witnessed and what you've gone through. Where does this celebration of life come from within you?
I truly cannot always explain how come I feel it, but I feel it down to my soul, from the bottom of my soul to the top of my head. It's something that I know I have to cling to, I have to hold on to. And those people that managed, many of them, in the various lagers, in the various camps, many of them were those that were able to imagine a different life, to think, oh, maybe I will see my son, maybe I will see my mother, maybe this will finish. This can go on forever. And those are many of the people who somehow survived. And I want to tell you, they survived horrors worse than I did. Worse than I did. The fact is, we all cling to life as long as we can. And sometimes that in itself gives us power and hope. Power and hope. As you see me here, I didn't only survive concentration camp. I survived yellow jaundice, removal of my tonsils, what else? Two operations of cancer. My son told my partner, Julie, he said, don't worry. I just recently, in last June, my heart started giving me trouble. That good heart that kept me alive. I give you trouble. And one of my sons said, don't worry. Gidon doesn't die. Eventually I will, of course. But yes, I cling on to life. And I hope for the best. I hope for the best.
Gidon, you're a remarkable man. You're absolutely remarkable. We should all learn from you. the stories, the things that you've gone through and your courage. Can I just ask you about when they came in and you were saved and you were able to leave the camp? That must have been the most. I mean, I've heard from other survivors that that moment is like nothing else that you can imagine.
Well, you have to remember, you probably spoke to people who were probably older than I am. But I was at that point in May 1945. I had just turned 10. I was 10 years old. By the time the Russian army freed us, they didn't even know the Russian army, but this was a lager, a camp, a concentration camp. They didn't know. They asked. They saw barbed wire. What is this? What is this? Что это? And people ran down to the barbed wire fence and broke it down and yelled, "This is a concentration camp, Jewish." And we the kids that were left, the Russians threw us candies and chocolate, and especially they threw cigarettes. Cigarettes weren't for us. People were, no, those that wanted to smoke was it's like for us a candy. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. And both my mother and I, we said, "Oh, we survived. I wonder who else is alive." It turned out that 26 people, at least, for my family, were destroyed, murdered, gassed, shot. By the way, something that is not known by many people. More people, Jews and also non-Jews, were shot than were gassed in gas chambers. The shootings were the most popular way the Germans used to kill people. The only thing that held them back sometimes was the lack of munition.
Gidon,
You cannot imagine that.
thank goodness we can't imagine, but I cannot thank you enough for sharing your story, because we need to be reminded of these stories. We must never, ever, ever forget. Um, you do wonderful things on Instagram, and your books are beautiful. Can I ask you, sorry to put you on the spot, but if there is a message that you would like to give to the people who listen and watch this, what is the message for every day, something that we can carry with us every day?
Okay, first of all, don't hesitate to ask. Don't hesitate to ask. I'm happy to talk, to say, to explain. If I know the answer, I will say it. If I don't, I will also say it. I don't know. There are a million things I don't know. You know, the older you get, the more you learn what you don't know.
Oh, you're done.
The fact is, things change. People change. Situations change. Relationships change. One of the few things that is 100% is change. Whether we like it or not, we see it all around us, minute by minute, day by day, here, there, and everywhere. And because of that, there's always that possibility that things can change for the better They don't always have to change for the worse. Sometimes that they do too. They do change for the worse. But after the worst comes maybe something better. So don't give up on believing, on hoping, and put yourself in the line of fire. Go out there, speak out, demonstrate, yell, write. That's what you can do. Do it. I have 6 children from 2 wives. And I was married the second time 40 years. Every one of them, in his or her own way, is in some way helping to make this world a better place. And it's not easy and it's not simple, but nobody said it would be. Nobody said it would be.
Gidon, I cannot thank you enough. It has been, as I said, a true honour. Tom, who's working on this as well, is nodding along with me. Thank you. Thank you for the book. Let's make things better. A Holocaust survivors' message of hope and a celebration of life. That's what we all need to do. It says on the back here, to me, hard times are like hide and seek. Where is the solution? Where is the hope? We can never give up looking for these things because they're just waiting to be found. And how right you are, sir. I wish you a very happy birthday for March and the next birthday and the next one. You carry on spreading your love, please, sir. It's a real, real honour. I salute you. I salute your kindness and your love. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Really.
Thank you very
We
much.
shall do as much as we can, even when now, here specifically, it looks very problematic. But it will change and we'll make it better. Thank you.
Gidon, thank you.